Okay. I'm going to try. Okay, cool. Well, welcome, Nancy. How are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm looking, somebody's raising their hand. Let me see if I can chat with this person. Um, I'm learning how to use this webinar functionality, which is pretty cool. So it's been really fun. And we're gonna try to stream this over to Facebook Live. But before we get started, and while people are logging on, you want to tell people a little bit about how you ended up being the parenting expert, and
Oh,
and also a little bit about Be the Adult, which I think is such a great nonprofit.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I came by this pretty honestly. My mom was a kindergarten teacher for over 30 years. And I would always, she would dim the lights to get the kids' attention. And so I learned pretty quickly that, calm and quiet was the way to go to gain respect and cooperation. And that's how she parented us. So was very lucky to have kind of what I talk about modeled for me at a very young age. Um, so yeah, and Be the Adult is my baby. It's a 501c3 nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
that I started about 6 years ago. We have a wonderful group of volunteers who work with me, and we wrote this book. You guys see that? Um, How to Be the Adult I Need, From My Heart to Yours. And it was illustrated by children in schools in New Hanover County. We held an art contest and we got thousands of amazing drawings. And there's drawings from 5-year-olds up through high school in here. And the book goes through the 15 things that all children need across all socioeconomic levels to thrive, to be their best selves. And it's the how and the why. And I'm so excited, in our second printing now. And we're going to post it on our website. A wonderful woman in town, an actress, is reading it for us with some kids. And we're also going to have it read in Spanish. So we're excited about that. And we're also, there's a company called Qualfon who wants to work with us to make the book actually into a Spanish book and distribute it in Mexico. So we're doing all sorts of things. Yeah, we're really excited about our podcast that we launched in November. And season 1 really goes through the book. Each episode of our podcast goes through each of the steps. And then we weren't going to do season 2 until August, until COVID struck. And so we launched season 2 about 2 months ago. So check us out. We're really excited.
We're going to go live on Facebook right now.
Okay.
And then we will drop all your, the podcast link and the book and everything in the show notes, and then follow up with an email so people can find you. But I'm going to go ahead and press the go live button.
Okay.
I think it's working. It's asking a lot of questions. Go live button at the bottom. Okay, we'll see. I don't know if we're live or not. Okay, it says don't put third-party video ads on our computer. Okay, we won't do that. And we'll see if we can get going here. Oh my goodness.
You said my tech support to your house.
That's right.
My son.
Well, they make it so easy, look so easy when they're, when they say like, hey, you're just going to go live. So we'll see if we can get it figured out. And if not, that, it is what it is.
I remember giving my parents a hard time about the VCR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing as humbling as tech when you're trying to get it to work. So I'm gonna keep trying to get it going a little bit. And maybe I'm just going to keep pushing. I'll keep pushing buttons, and you know what? If we go live and it's just kind of in the middle, that'll be okay. I'm sure people can surmise what we're talking about. But as people are logging on, I know that you teach a lot of this parenting in schools and in different places. What are the top things that you're hearing from parents right now in the pandemic before we dig in? I mean, where are people with this parenting situation right now?
Yeah, that's the first thing I was really going to start talking about, that we're in a trauma. And so trauma with a capital T, there's kind of little T's and big T's, and they all affect us in profound ways. But as the trauma has gone on, more and more people, myself included, are finding ourselves more anxious, I was listening to a podcast. I'm trying to remember who it was, and she said that parenting through this trauma is like running a marathon, but nobody tells you how long the marathon is. It's normally 26 miles, right? But they say, it's just a certain number of miles, and along the way we're gonna, throw rotten eggs at you, and there are gonna be potholes and all sorts of things, and so it's really hard as people are realizing that there's not a finite end to this right now, at least, and people are having trouble coping, myself included. It's a really tough time.
It is. And I think that parenting is already such a high stakes sort of thing.
Yes.
That it heightens the experience. And then, of course, many of us are having the opportunity to spread our wings as home educators. And so that's been a challenge too.
Yeah, I'll just put up my next slide, which has, if I can.
Yeah.
I might need to call my tech support.
That's okay. I mean, I think we're live on Facebook. If we are, oh, good. Lisa says it worked on Facebook. Fantastic.
All right. You know what? I am so sorry, but my slides are not forwarding.
Going forward.
I apologize. I will be right back. Okay. Can you
No, you're okay.
For a minute? Okay.
It could be me. I don't know. Nancy's son is home from New York, and he's helping her with her tech, which I think is the best. Oh, wow. I see us on Facebook. This is crazy. Do y'all want to hear a funny story while we're waiting on Nancy? So one time, the first time I went live on Facebook, I thought I was talking to the Inspiration Lab members, which is, about 300 women who I feel like I know personally, and I know many of them personally. And I'm just like yakking about girl stuff, and all of a sudden I see my Uncle Roger pop up in the comments and throws a thumbs up, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I got off Facebook Live really fast. I had no idea I'd broadcast myself to all of my friends. So I'm learning about Facebook, and if Uncle Roger's on here, hello, love you. Glad you're here tonight now that we understand. Okay, cool. Nancy, I'll let you take it away, since we just kind of started with the trauma situation. And if it's good, I'll just turn my camera off and let you teach. And then I'll pop in if I have some questions or some clarifications. Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
So hi, everybody. I'm just going to pick up where Stephanie left off. And she was mentioning that we are taking on so many roles right now, right? Where they're coach, teacher, piano instructor, pretty soon they're camp counselors, and parenting and on kind of normal times, whatever that means, is incredibly challenging. You don't need me to tell you that. But right now, in this trauma, it's just incredibly difficult. And we're doing our best to cope with the psychological, emotional impact of the trauma and all the losses that we ourselves as parents are going through, and the anxieties that we feel in this. And without the typical support that we usually have from the gym and friends and the kinds of things we do to take good care of our souls. So as hard as it is for us, imagine now how hard it is for our children, right? Because they don't have their adult brains until they're 25. Yeah, sorry to tell you, it's a long time from now. And they're doing their best to cope, and they're scared. They hear us talking, hopefully not too much, right? And they might hear the TV, and hopefully, again, we don't have it on often for ourselves either. That they pick up on our energy, and they know all of the world has been turned upside down, how suddenly they're suffering these loss of schools and connections with friends and all their typical structure that they have. And what happens with a lot of children, and adults too, but more so with children, is that when they're scared, they often get defiant. And so because it's safer to put up my shield or porcupine needles, right, to protect my heart, than to sit in my vulnerability, my fear. And they don't have the development yet to say, hey, Mom, I'm really, really scared about this. Instead, they say that through their actions, and we'll talk more about that. But this defiance comes at us, and then we're just trying to survive. And it's just this perfect storm in this cycle of child's defiant, I react, child's defiant, I react, and it just is really difficult. So we're going to learn tonight how to have more grace for them, which actually begins with having more grace for ourselves. So I'm glad you're here. I know you could be anywhere right now. Some of you, your children might be asleep and you could be watching Netflix or popping popcorn, but you decided to come listen to me. So I am very touched and appreciative of that. And I'm also thanking you for your children, from your children, because you are going to grow tonight and they are going to benefit, and they can't be here to thank you. I'm their voice tonight. So I'm thanking you. During my talk, a lot of parents tend to kind of beat themselves up at times. We all carry a bat around in life. Some of us have heavier bats than others, and we beat ourselves up. And if I want to run around the bases, but I take my bat and hit myself instead of the ball, I'm going to decrease the probability that I can make it all around. So everybody, please take your bat and just put it down right now, please. Okay, and please know that we parent like we were parented unless we make a conscious effort to do it differently, which you're doing right now. So you're doing a lot better job than you think you are, just that you're taking an hour and a half to listen to me to become better. So thank you. Some of the tools we got from our parents, I don't blame parents. Your parents, my parents, they did their best. Some of what they gave us was great, some not so great. Same with us. Some of what we're doing is great, some needs some improvement. So we're just going to become aware of the tools that we have that don't work so well, and we're going to replace them. So everybody, please take your right hand, and I wish I could see you all, and pat yourself on the back and thank yourself for being here, because I am thanking you too. All right, so our journey begins. I love this picture. So I forgot to tell you, I have 3 boys. Well, I say boys, they're young men. They're 25. I can't believe this, 25, 23, and 19. It's crazy, because I remember when they were that big. But I was in a hospital in Washington, D.C., Georgetown University Hospital, scared, went through a traumatic delivery, C-section, and I was crying, and my baby was crying. He cried for 3 months, and this nurse kind of pushed the door open really abruptly, stared me down. I think she had just come out of the Army or something. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you know your baby's crying?" And I kind of rolled my eyes and probably cocked my head a little bit. She's like, "We can hear your baby all the way down to the nurse's station. Can you make him stop?" And I just looked at her, just dumbfounded, like, I don't know. So she took a blanket, one of those generic blankets, wrapped Sam up, swaddled him. And I thought, hey, I can do that. I can be halfway intelligent when I want to be. And I tried it, picked him up, blanket fell off. It's my first awareness that this parenting thing was going to be so much harder than I thought it was. I spent most of my pregnancy reading what to expect when I was expecting, and I should have been reading about how to parent. So again, you don't need me to tell you how hard this is, especially during this pandemic that we're in, this trauma. I know that all of you are aware, you wouldn't be here listening, that parenting is high stakes, really serious business, and we all feel an intense pressure to do it right, whatever that means. And where else do we feel so vulnerable and unqualified? I know I do on a daily basis, right? And we often wonder why this is just so hard to do, hardest job I've ever had. And so we're going to answer that question as we move forward. And I'm assuming we usually take some time when I'm in person asking kind of what people want from their children. But what I typically hear are things like love. We all want love. We want cooperation, a lot of it, especially now, respect and peace. And parents who aren't getting the love, cooperation, and respect they want, they'll call me. They'll say, "Nancy, I'm going to drop Junior off. I'm going to go to Harris Teeter and do my shopping. I'm going to pick him up, and I want you to fix him." And I say, I promise I'm nicer than this, but I say, "I wish I could, but my wand broke yesterday," right? But really, there are no secret fixes or formulas or quick fixes to whip kids into shape overnight. I so wish that there were. But our interactions with our children did not get this way overnight, right? We can't expect them to change overnight. And that's a tough sell that I have. We live in a fast food culture. All of us want things fixed now or really yesterday. And building great relationships simply takes a lot of hard work and time. So buckle up your mind for about the next hour and 15, 20 minutes or so. I really hope you get a lot out of this. I'm having fun, so I hope you are too. But children throw a lot at us, rapid fire, all day long. They hit their brother. They don't want to do their homework. They don't want to eat their vegetables. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to come inside. right? They want to play with their friends, but we can't let them now at times. So during COVID, we have a big red stop sign on the door that we've told our children, right? Unless it's an emergency, I'm on a work call, you know, don't open the door. And they barge in because their Lego is stuck, right? So they throw things at us rapid fire all day long. And about halfway through my talk, I'm going to teach you a 5-step parenting process of how to start dealing with whatever's thrown at us. And I'm going to give you a quick tip. I say that these are parenting skills, but they're really relationship skills. Everything I talk about tonight, I'm going to use examples of parenting. I might throw a few marital examples in there, but these are relationship skills. So please take what I talk about tonight and just use them throughout your life. Okay. So before we can get to the 5-step parenting process, we have work to do. And the most important thing we can do is begin with ourselves. Okay. So this is when a lot of parents will come up to me after my talks and they'll say, oh my gosh, Nancy, I looked at my watch when you said that. I was like, I'm fine. I'm stuck here for an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and a half. I don't need work. I'm good. It's my kids, fix them, right? But what is parenting, right? If we have what we call a contact boundary, you have two people showing up, parent, child, at the contact boundary. We label it parenting. You could label it whatever you want. It's two people, parent, child, making contact. So I need to be aware of what I'm bringing with me, what emotions I'm bringing with me, what history I'm bringing with me to that present moment when I interact with my child. Because if I don't, it's not going to go as well as it could. Because I view the family as a system, right? And we are leaders of that family system. That's a hard job. We're leaders of the family system. Excuse me. So take a moment and think about characteristics of leaders in your life. Now, 20 years ago, people who you actually wanted, let's see, operative word here, wanted to help guide you through something. So everybody just take a moment and think of adjectives you would use to describe the people who you actually wanted to look to for leadership and guidance, okay? So now's when we would go around the room, and I'm gonna tell you some adjectives people usually throw out. Calm, respectful, confident, trustworthy, right? Rational, grounded, centered. Even if we sat here for 32 years, I don't think I'd hear words like loud, explosive, unpredictable, irrational. So if we want to be those leaders as adults who our children can feel safe bringing anything to, even though they know we're not going to like it, there might be consequences, which we'll get to, they can trust that we can be the adults who catch and hold with a calm heart and an open heart, right, that we're going to talk about, so they can feel safe to bring anything to us. Because if they don't feel safe to bring anything to us, they'll bring it to somebody else, and we don't know how someone else is going to guide and lead them. So if I want to be the inspirational and influential parent, adult leader in my child's life, I need to learn to become what I call the 3 C's. I need to learn to become calm, which is hard for many of us. I need to learn to become connected, right? It's kind of easy to be calm when I'm disconnected, but it's extremely hard when I'm actually present and engaged with someone and connected. And we need to learn to become capable, right? Aware people. If I can learn to become a calm, capable, and connected person, I have a pretty good shot at becoming a calm, capable, and connected parent. So now what I've heard from many people is they were sitting here listening to my talk thinking, oh, well, forget it, I'm done. I will never learn to become calm. And what I want to tell you, right, is that it's never too late for us to grow. It's never too late to change how we dance in relationships if we look at relationships as based on patterns and not personalities. I'm curious if anyone's ever tried to change someone's personality. I know I have, and it just doesn't work. Don't recommend it, okay? So I had a mom come in years ago, and she said she wanted to break her 4-year-old spirit And I know that she was just really frustrated and having a hard head spinning time with her son. I knew that the qualities that her child was exhibiting that were getting in her way that day were really, really cool qualities that would carry him far in life. And so we did some work for her to see that. And we had to look at the patterns of the relationship, right? So we don't want to look at personalities. We want to look at patterns. When her son did something, what did she do? And then when she did that, how did her son react or respond? And then what did she do? So that's where our power is, and that's what we're gonna really dig into soon. But we've been creating patterns. If you have a 4-year-old for 4 years, if you have a 16-year-old, 16 years of the line in the sand, right? That's pretty deep. If you've been married for 20 years, that's 20 years of patterns that we've been creating. So creating the change is definitely possible. It just takes a lot of hard work, okay? So we shake hands to keep patterns stuck. So I'm going to pretend that one of you stuck your hand out as my child and said that you're my whiny kid. So just pretend that. And I'm the parent and I stick my hand out and now we're shaking hands. And the child says, I'm your whiny child. I'm the parent. And I say, great. How can I help you whine? Every time you whine, I'm going to give you a ton of attention for your whining. Every time you whine, I'm going to beg and plead with you to stop whining because you're driving me crazy. Every time you whine, I'm going to tell your dad or anyone who will listen how I just can't take this, okay? And I'm going to sit here for 18 years, shaking hands in this pattern and wondering why it's not changing. And in the process, I'm not going to feel so great, and neither are you, because this is a very hopeless, helpless position to be in, okay? So what I'm going to teach you tonight is to first become aware of the patterns that we have created and learn how to remove your hand from the handshake. And then pattern changes. I show up at that contact boundary different, and I will feel better because I have now removed my hand from the handshake and I can feel more peaceful and more empowered. And then I show up hopefully happier from that with more joy and less reactivity, which you're going to talk about in a minute. And then you have a choice whether you want to change. It's a very powerful position to be in. Okay, so the good news is that if you have problems in your relationships, which we all do, the good news is that you are part of the problem. You helped create it, so you can help change it. All right, simple concept, extremely hard to do because it's hard for our children to grow up. But who is it even harder for? Us, right? I love this picture, it cracks me up. We are the adults in our relationship with our children, right? Simple concept, but really hard to do. Parenting demands 24/7, and now really 24/7 is pretty appropriate, right? I have to laugh, sorry, so otherwise we'll just feel our stress. But parenting demands that we grow up in 3 really hard areas. Ready? Patience. I know most of us have trouble with that. Integrity, which means I say what I mean what I say, and I follow through, okay? And consistency. Patience, integrity, and consistency. This is one of the main reasons parenting is so hard, right? Where else in your life are you challenged to grow up, right? 24/7 with very few breaks, right? And very little support and very little thanks from our children when they're young. Where else in our lives are we really challenged to grow up like that, right? And how we handle growing ourselves up will directly influence how our children handle growing themselves up. I'll say that one more time because it's so important. How we handle growing ourselves up directly influences how our children handle growing themselves up. So our children need to grow up and be the adult, right? And they need us to be cool. And I love this picture, right? This is not what I'm talking about when I say being cool. And please, if you have teenagers, do not go on Facebook and friend them. It's just pretty creepy. That will not go well. What I'm talking about, them needing us to be cool, is they need us to calm down, okay? They need us to grow up, raise our integrity, and calm ourselves down, lowering our voices, raising our integrity, and lowering our voices, taking hold of our responses. And here's the hardest part about parenting: no matter what our children do, no matter the choices they make, no matter how they behave, right? I have to learn how to, what we call self-regulate, which we're going to talk about, how to be that adult who they need to guide them. So I hate to tell you this, but your children, our children, cannot push us over the edge. And here's a tough one: they cannot make us scream. They are our feelings, our behaviors, our choices. Okay? Really hard, but so important, because when we don't calm ourselves down, right, and guide them in a calm way, we get what we call reactive. Okay? And reactivity in any dynamic ruins, doesn't just make things worse, but it ruins relationships. I'm sure you all have thousands of examples. I know I do from my life. But I'm going to talk about the top 3 reasons why reactivity is toxic in parenting. Okay? So first off, when we get reactive, we get regressive, right? Think about a 2-year-old who's throwing a tantrum, or a 13-year-old or a 50-year-old. They're all tantrums. We just call them different things, okay? And then we start throwing a tantrum. We get reactive, right? And the child's screaming, and then we start screaming. We act as immature as they do. And then we wonder why they're not calming down in that moment. And then bigger picture, we wonder why we're losing their respect, right? We're telling our child to calm down and grow up. But, my behavior is saying, you know what, you don't really need to do that because I can't. I'm an adult, but I can't really do that. And not only in the moment, that's going to become a problem, because we're not going to see the behaviors that we want. Child's not going to all of a sudden, when I'm going nuts, stop and look at me and go, oh, I'm so sorry, Mom, right? They're probably going to scream out, and we'll talk about why in a little later. But bigger picture, we lose their trust to guide them and lead them. If they know that we freak out when they freak out, they're not going to feel safe coming to us and bringing us things, and then they're going to stop. And I don't blame them, right? Because I don't want my kids to learn to put up with adults in their lifetime, whether it's partners or bosses or whomever, that go nuts and scream at them. That's not what they deserve. They deserve better, okay? Number 2 reason reactivity is toxic is just fire to fire. Emotions are energy. When you've got a kid screaming and you scream, then they scream louder, and then I scream louder, it just makes things worse. Right? Our reactivity gives children the attention for the very behaviors that we want to go away, right? We might as well be giving them a bag of M&Ms, because negative attention to a child, I'm sure many of you have heard this, is better than not getting our attention. And as an adult, I've always had a really hard time wrapping my head around that, because if I'm interacting with another adult and you're mean to me, I will do everything I can to not interact with you again. But our children, if we scream, yell, shame, whatever we do, they'll check the box and keep doing whatever they're doing to get that, because they would glue themselves to us 24/7 if they could, right? I'm sure you guys know that. They want our attention. Enough is not enough for them, okay? So they figure out how to get our attention. They check the box. They keep doing it again. Number 3 reason reactivity is toxic: it just makes things worse. Real quick story. So I had a mom years ago who told me that it was Saturday morning, and I think her son was 5, and she worked during the week and didn't have time to get the things that her child needed for the first soccer practice on Saturday. So she woke him up early. He was tired. She was dragging him through the parking lot, not literally dragging him, but he wasn't really wanting to get out of the car. And they got into, I forgot whether it's Walmart or Dick's or something like that. And the 5-year-old saw a big thing of balls. And what do 5-year-old boys do? They see balls like a magnet. So mom flipped out. She's like, we're going to be late, right? And so it's not time to play with balls. And so the kid looks up, sees mom's head spinning, takes off. He was scared. Her reactivity created the very outcome she was hoping to avoid. She was now running through the store, chasing him, acting like a crazy person. Her reactivity created the very outcome she was hoping to avoid. They were late. All right. So we're smart people. Why do we get reactive, right? There's so many things in parenting that are scary. You don't need me to tell you that. When they're young, we're nervous that they're going to get bullied or be bullied, sibling rivalry. We could have 12 webinars on screens and adolescent behavior and grades and all of that. So reactivity, parenting is fraught with anxiety, and reactivity is caused by are an emotion, anger, hurt, sadness, fear, that comes in. The data comes in, we get triggered. We perceive something as a threat. Well, it's really our child or our spouse, but our brains think it's a tiger, right? Because the smart part of our brains, when we get emotional, turn off, right? We're in the emotional part of our brain. And our brain is wired to fight the tiger or run away from the tiger, right? And in this pandemic, right, our brains were not wired to be in this never-ending trauma, right? Our brains were wired to deal with trauma, to deal with the tiger, and then recover so we could then be ready for the next tiger. But we're in this never-ending space where our brains really aren't having time, our bodies to really calm down and rejuvenate. So anyway, we're all scared about how our children will turn out, right? We all want to be these well-rounded, well-adjusted adults, whatever that means to you. And we're scared. What if they get bad grades or make bad choices or want to smoke pot as they get older? And we don't know what to do about it. So our reactivity is we're trying to make ourselves feel better and do something, right? Trying to control, just like people are hoarding toilet paper. Now we're trying to feel like we have some control over what's going on. So we kind of helicopter, I love her eyes, look at that, over our kids. And we think if I can control them, micromanage them, then my anxiety is brought down and they'll turn out the way I want them to be. Quick example, I had a mom come in years ago. She was telling me about her daughter. She sounded lovely. Mom was doing a great job in so many ways. But I noticed she wasn't really talking about her child's peer relationships. So I asked her, I said, I'm curious, tell me what your daughter likes to do. Tell me about her friends, right? And her affect changed, her face changed, and she got very serious. And she said that she doesn't allow her daughter, right? This is a 13 or 14-year-old, to go out, to go to football games with her friends at high school or do any of that because she was scared her daughter was going to meet a boy and then some things would happen. I don't know if children are watching, so I'm just watching my language. So fill in the blank. So anyway, this mother's backpack, I understood where her fear came from, where her fear got triggered, right? And why she wanted to keep her thumb on her daughter, pure of heart. We all are doing the best, what we think is best for our children. And that's what she thought was best. But can you imagine that poor 14-year-old who wasn't allowed to have, peer relationships or go out and do social things, okay? So this mom was caught in what we call responsibility for, right? Her thinking was responsibility for, and notice the red, because in our next slide, you need to notice that. Responsibility for means it's my job to get my child, my partner, my coworker, my boss, fill in the blank, to think, feel, and behave the way I want them to, right? Kids, children, choose how they feel, think, and behave, thankfully. Children simply make different choices than we want them to, right? Our partners simply make different choices than we want them to. But responsibility for is a setup in parenting. Most of us believe that we can make our children do their homework. And unless you're duct taping your arm to your child's arm, which please, I'm not recommending that you do, you cannot make them do their homework. You cannot make them do well on a test at school or make them be good people, right? So we need to concentrate on what we can control. If we're not responsible for our children or anybody else in this world for that matter, what is our responsibility? Well, our responsibility, when you change the word for to to, changes everything. I live, eat, and breathe to help children be happier, right? And help children and parents have happier relationships with their children. And I don't believe we're responsible for them. I believe we're responsible to them. I am responsible to my child to be the best mother I can be. I'm responsible to you right now to be the best presenter I can be. I'm responsible to my children to be the best parent I can be. I'm responsible to society right now to be the best citizen I can be, okay? So it's my responsibility all day long for what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and most importantly, how I behave towards you, okay, towards my child. So I want everyone to say this out loud, and I'm going to know if you don't say it. I'm kidding. All right, you ready? I am responsible to my child for how I behave, regardless of how he or she behaves. Okay? So Remember that. We are only responsible for ourselves. We can only control ourselves. All right? And it's so important because we are modeling how to live life. We need to get ourselves calm, centered, grounded, whatever word you want to use, non-reactive, self-regulated, because kids hear a very small amount of what we say, but they do what we do. And this is another reason parenting is so hard. We're modeling for them how to handle anger, hurt, sadness, fear, joy, how to have a relationship, right? How to study, how to drive at some point, how to clean up, how to cook, not so well in my house, right? But in theory. So it's really important that we can make choices in life, respond, which we're going to talk about how to do this shortly. But we need to be calm and centered so we can move through life as those guides. We don't want to control and be above them. We don't want to be underneath them where they're controlling us. We want to walk next to them in life, shoulder to shoulder, guiding. Okay? We are just the more experienced person in this dynamic. We have more knowledge, more education, more training, but we are still walking next to them through this, shoulder to shoulder. Okay? So we need to look at our behavior first. Okay? So when kids don't do something we like, we need to see if an adult or both adults in the house are modeling it. For example, parents will come in all the time, at least once a week, and say, Nancy, I can't get my child to stop screaming. Fill in the blank, whether they're 3 or 15 or 13, right? And what's one of my very first questions? Do you scream? And you see the light bulbs just going off, right? I had a mom come in. It was pretty sad. She was distraught, and she had caught her 13-year-old son smoking. What was one of my first questions? And you saw the light bulbs go off, and she said, well, I guess he's learning it from me, but I don't know how because I hide it really well. Okay. So our children want us to be better leaders. I know one child who actually went up to his parent and said, Dad, you're screwing this up. Please be a better dad. But most parents don't have the development to do that, right? But they say that to us every day, all day long by testing us. They throw out test ropes. Those are those rapid fire tests all day long, right? They constantly throw out test ropes to see what we're going to do. Are we there yet? I'm not going to eat that. I'm not going to do my homework, right? They won't eat their vegetables. They go, all the things they do all day long, rapid fire. And they want to see how we are going to handle this. If they can trust that we're going to be those leaders that they need, right? So they want to see if we're going to pick up the ropes. I'm going to give you an example. So I'm going to pretend that one of you is my child again and say that you are throwing a rope out and the test is, I'm bored. If your child hasn't said that to you yet, I can almost guarantee that you will hear it at some point in his or her childhood. So let's say the child throws the rope out and says, I'm bored. Okay, now I'm parent. And so data's coming in. It's triggering my backpack, my history. And I am going to get angry and I'm going to lean over to try to control to bring my anger down. So I get reactive, I lean down, I pick up the rope and I engage in a power struggle, which sounds something like this. Bored? What do you mean bored? How can you be bored? You know what bored is? Going to work all day long to pay for all this stuff you have. Okay? Now I'm engaged in a tug of war and a power struggle. If you remember back to one of my first slides, that's that handshake. We are now in a dance and I am part of the problem, okay? Let's just say another example is that child throws the same rope and says, I'm bored. And now it triggers my fear, my anxiety. So I'm scared. So again, I get reactive, I reach down, I pick up the rope and I engage. And I say, oh, bored? How can you be bored? I must be the worst mother in the whole world because you have so many toys and so much to do and you can't figure this out. So now I get even more reactive and I try to fix it. Why don't you go bake a cake? Why don't you do your homework? Why don't you go play basketball? Why don't you talk to your friend? Here, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll play with you because I think I have to entertain you. And I'm scared that if I don't, then you're going to be 25 sitting in your apartment sucking your thumb or wanting to smoke pot because you're so bored and you can't figure this out. Okay, so I have now been reactive and created a bigger problem. I have just now reinforced the negative behavior. Child's like, cool, I'm not bored anymore. This is fun. Look at mom's head spin, right? She's engaging with me. So check the box. Tomorrow they're going to throw their rope and say, I'm bored, to get that reaction from us, okay? So what we want to do, and I'm going to teach you step by step how to do this, but I'm just going to model what a different approach would look like. And then I will explain it to you as we move forward. But I'm going to notice the rope that my child just said, I'm bored. And I'm not going to pick it up because it's really hard when you pick up a rope to stop playing tug of war. You ever try that? Somebody falls or both people fall, right? And it's just fun to play tug of war too. So anyway, it's entertaining. So I'm going to acknowledge the rope and say, oh, wow, I hear that you're bored. I hear that you're having trouble figuring out what you want to do. And then I'm going to turn it back on them and I'm going to say, huh, I hate it when I'm bored. I don't like that. What are you going to do about it? I have confidence in you that you can figure this out. Okay, that is engaging, guiding, validating, which we're going to talk about, letting my child know that he or she was heard. But I'm not going to try to fix it for them. I'm not going to get reactive and reinforce the negative behavior. I'm going to show up differently. And we're going to talk more about that very soon. All right, real quick, a couple more things of how we parent through our reactivity, trying to control, because we think that will take care of us in our relationships, and it doesn't. We push too hard. This is very common, kind of pre-COVID, sorry. We would overschedule our children, taking them to 3 or 4 activities every semester, signing our kids up for 4 or 5 AP classes in one semester, right? We're pushing them too fast towards adulthood. Why? It comes from a good place. Remember, we're all doing our best. We want our kids to be exposed to all of this. So when they're adults, they know how to do all this stuff, right? So it comes from a good place, but we're scared. So we get reactive, and this is what we do. And we structure all their activities. We overschedule them. True story. I had a mom years and years ago who, again, from her heart, she thought she was doing great for her child. She signed her 13-year-old for SAT tutoring. Okay, 13-year-old for SAT tutoring. Her intentions were pure, her intentions were good, but I can't imagine the stress on that child that soon, that early in his career. Okay, so when we do this, what happens is, right, children lack joy. They get incredibly anxious. There's so much anxiety, even pre-COVID, for our children now. A lot of anxiety disorders being diagnosed, right? They have trouble maintaining relationships, and we wonder why. Well, we've overscheduled them. We haven't given them space to play, to be, to connect, right? To have joy in their relationships. The polarity of that, the flip side of that, right, is we bubble wrap them, we overprotect them. Why? Again, it comes from a good place. We're scared. We don't want them to suffer rejection or disappointment because it's really hard to watch our children suffer, right? So we overprotect them. We intervene with the school when they get a bad grade. I've read many articles about parents calling college counselors or college professors when their children are in college get a bad grade, okay? We problem solve for our kids. We do their science projects. We micromanage their friendships and get in the middle when they have an argument with their best friend. Again, it comes from a good place, but it's because we're getting reactive, we're scared. And then we complain as they grow why they're immature adults, why they lack initiative, why they lack drive, right? But it's like going to the gym. If we're doing everything for a kid and we go to the gym and we want them to get stronger, but we get weights, we pick them up, we put them down in front of our child, but then we reach over, we pick up the weights and we do the reps ourselves. Who's going to get stronger? Us or our child? Okay. So the key is to find a healthy balance between protecting them and helping them, right? Give them space to grow, to figure out who they are, not who we want them to be. And this is really hard. All our unfinished business gets in the way. We think we know what's best for them, right? Really hard to give them this space, but this is crucial, right? We need to communicate to them that they are good enough for us, that they are good enough for us, that what they bring into this world, into this moment, is good enough for us. Otherwise, they feel shame. And let's talk about shame for a few minutes, and then we're going to get into this 5-step parenting process, okay? So when children are born, they take their hearts and they hand them to us. And if there's one parent, they hand it to that one parent. If there's two, they hand their heart to both parents. And they say, Mom, Dad, take good care of my heart. And they have no history to tell them that that's not a good idea, that that's not safe. They're pure on vulnerable. They hand their heart over to us. They say, please take good care of my heart. And we all try our best again. And when we do a pretty good job at doing that, a couple beautiful things happen. They feel safe with us. They feel safe being vulnerable, being seen, and being known, because we're showing them that they're good enough for us, and that keeping their heart out and all open and vulnerable is a good idea, because we're holding it gently with all the things we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk more about, okay? Then some more beautiful things happen. This relationship between parent and child is pretty good, because child feels loved, seen, heard, respected, valued, all of that, good enough. And then child will go out into the world and will look for, pretty much unaware, but they will look for relationships that perpetuate how they felt about themselves in their family of origin. Now I'm oversimplifying this, but you get the gist, okay? So they will typically gravitate towards healthier relationships if they feel that's what they deserve, okay? Which is what they learned in their family of origin. Now on the flip side, when children hand their heart over, and again, remember we parent like we were parented. We all come by this stuff honestly. So no shame, okay, in what you're doing. Some of us, right, have heavier trauma in our backpacks than others. Just know that. But we're all doing our best. But when they hand us their hearts and we haven't learned how to parent in the way I'm talking about tonight, you know, come by what we do honestly, right? And we create shame, again, unintentionally, right? Where you communicate they're not fast enough or smart enough or pretty enough or enough like their brother or whatever it is. They slowly withdraw their heart because they're stuck in this system and they have to learn how to survive it. And if being vulnerable and having their heart open doesn't feel very good, then they withdraw it. And if the system is really toxic, right, in abusive situations, they typically build walls, sometimes pretty thick walls, in between their hearts and parent, because they have to. They have to learn how to protect their hearts if it's not being done for them. I get teary when I talk about this. It's just hard to talk about, right? And it might be hard to hear, just know that. And so this relationship between parent and child isn't so beautiful. And then child doesn't feel very good about him or herself because they felt shame, less than, not good enough. And then they go out into the world, and again, unaware, they typically will seek out more relationships that perpetuate that shame, that not feeling good enough. And then these are how, and again, I'm oversimplifying this, but you can see how things just get perpetuated over and over again through intergenerational things happen. So what we're about to start is how to parent in a way to avoid that shame. We want to communicate that our child, the polarity of shame is that our children are good enough, right? And it's wholehearted parenting, and that's what we're about to talk about, okay? So before we go further, I'd like everyone just to take a couple deep breaths. Maybe put your feet on the ground. I like to feel my face. I like to rub my arms. Okay, I know I'm putting out a lot of information, and it's difficult to hear for many of us, okay? So just be gentle with yourself, have some grace. Again, I'm appreciating that you're just here listening to me, okay? So thank you. All right, so yes.
Nancy, yeah, we have one quick question, which maybe you could get to it later, but it said, somebody was asking, what if parents react differently? Like dad does one thing on the extreme and mom does something else. Sort of what does the kid process there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So hopefully I'll answer some of that in moving forward. But again, it's a great question. We're only responsible for ourselves. And so we have no control over what the other parent does. I have more parents than not where one will come in part of a couple, wanting the other one to come in, but he or she hasn't or doesn't want to yet. We work on that. And when I tell the person and what I see over and over happen over and over again is we have a tremendous amount of power in the present moment over us, right? We only have power over us. And we can change the system, our family system. And what typically happens, where typically we try to yank our partner with us. Come on, we need help. Let's change what we're doing, right? And then typically when someone tries to pull you, you dig in deeper, right? Get more resistant, right? And just creates an exhausting cycle. But if you say, hey, you know what? You do your thing. I'm going to do mine. And what happens is the other partner starts seeing that mom or dad, whoever goes in, let's just say it's mom, becomes more peaceful, happier, more joyful. Children feel more respected. They're listening better. Beautiful things start happening. And then typically what happens, this is our hope, that the other partner who didn't want to come in is like, I want to learn to do that. That works really well. Look how happy our children are. And they keep gravitating towards her. So that's kind of my short answer. I hope that was.
That's so great, because we heard that even when you came and did the parenting workshop for us in person. It was so great. And so many women and folks were saying, I wish my husband was here. I wish my partner was here. And that's part of why we're doing it today, and we're recording it so other people can hear it. But I think that message of just, we're responsible for our own actions and emotions. I mean, we know this intellectually, it's just so hard to do that. So I'm looking forward to your 5 steps so we can learn how to put it into practice.
Great. And thank you, listener, for the question. So, okay, so let's jump in. I'm going to go through each of these steps: awareness, I'm triggered; self-regulation, poker face; connection, listen and validate; and structure in detail. All right. So let's start with the first one. So, many of us find ourselves now through COVID kind of looking like that, right? Pretty stressed out, right? And so what happens is the first step is awareness that I am triggered. So you remember, everything starts with me. I only have control over me for what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and what I'm doing towards you, okay? So I have to catch myself when I start going above 0, right? I want to catch myself as I'm going up at 10, maybe 20 before I get to 60, because it's super hard to come down when we're at 60. Right? If you just use a simple analogy, you're driving a car, much easier to stop, shift, change course from 10 miles an hour than it is from 60, okay? Best way to know we're triggered is our bodies. And this is sometimes where I lose people. And some of us are not in touch with our body. We have trauma and other things. So please take what I say and massage it however it fits for you. Have grace for yourself, be gentle with yourself, and just baby steps, okay? But my brain can spin anything. I don't know about yours, but my body cannot lie to me, okay? When my brain says I'm mad, I typically have my arms crossed. I have energy going somewhere, and my affect changes. I get kind of steely. When my brain says I'm hurt, did you just hear my voice get softer? That was unconscious, right? Subconscious. And my body gets smaller, okay? My body has so much information that I'm unaware of that could be helpful. And if I can't first be aware that I'm triggered, none of these next steps will work, okay? So what I'm going to give you is homework, okay? And I'm going to model for you now is to learn how to do a body scan, where we literally just take data in. We don't analyze it. When we analyze something, we leave the moment, we go into history. Instead of the why of something, not why is my heart beating fast, but how am I being affected in this moment? This is the first place we start. Wow, I'm being affected. My heart's beating. I'm sweating. My arms are crossed. My jaw is tense. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I have butterflies in my chest. So my body is starting to become what we call dysregulated, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, okay? So I need to know that's happening. If you can do that simple body scan for 30 seconds, many times a day, you will start noticing patterns and themes about what your body does. When your child, let's say your child comes in and starts talking about homework, and you clench your fists in your jaw. Let's say that your partner starts talking about his mother and you start sucking air, okay? This is a clue that something's happening around me that's not causing me joy. If I'm not careful, going to get thrown off balance, knocked over, hopping around the room on one foot instead of two, balanced and centered like we want to be. Okay, so start gaining awareness. After a short time, you're going to notice these patterns and themes. So you can proactively be aware, oh, this pattern typically triggers me. Let me use my steps. Okay? So step number 1, if you could repeat them after me, just so they start imprinting, so you can leave the talk with some things to do. Awareness, I'm triggered. So we're talking about, again, how to parent as an adult. This is an adult parenting process of how to respond as an adult instead of react, because we all know, we learned in the first part of my talk, that reactivity is toxic, creates the very outcomes we're hoping to avoid, tears down relationships. Okay, step 2 is called self-regulation. This refers, kind of just in a nutshell, I'm going to oversimplify it, to my ability to manage disruptive emotions, impulses, okay? One of our primary responsibilities to, there's that word again, our children, is to teach them how to regulate, teach them how to self-regulate, right? And little kids don't know how to do this, right? And no one will know how to do it unless we teach them, but they really don't start learning how to do this till they're about age 4 or so. So when we're not regulated, and regulated, you can use a million different words: calm, centered, grounded, present, engaged, right? When I'm calm and centered and present, the smart part of my brain can engage and do what I need it to do, right? When I'm not regulated, I'm dysregulated. There's hyper dysregulation, which is kind of that, and then there's hypo, which is more of the shut down and inward. But all you really need to remember is when I'm not calm, centered, and grounded, right, I'm dysregulated, which means that internet smart part of my brain is turned off. It's offline, and I'm now interacting through my emotions, okay? And when I interact through my emotions, if you think back to reactivity, I'm just changing the language, but it's the same stuff I've been talking about earlier. I'm just getting a little deeper into it. When I become reactive or dysregulated, I now become part of the threat. So my child was initially upset about his Legos breaking, but now, and he was screaming, now when I'm screaming, I have just increased the threat. He perceives me as a threat, and he's going to get more off balance, more dysregulated, more spinning. Okay, so how do we get ourselves regulated? All right, so there's 100, probably thousands of different ways we can regulate, and I encourage you to please go online. There's wonderful resources about how to do this. I just picked kind of top 3 in my book that are kind of easier, not easy, but easier to do in the moment with kids. So how to self-regulate. So step number 1, remember, is the awareness I'm triggered. And then we want to regulate. So we teach our children how to regulate. And they need us to be that external regulator sometimes, right? When they can't do it, they need us to be able to do it. So we need to learn how to model this for them, so we can co-regulate together, okay? So we can all calm down together and then hopefully have a productive, connected situation, conversation. So I visualize my calm space, whether that's on a mountain, skiing, on a surfboard, sitting on the beach, right? Getting your nails done, going for a run, whatever it is that you can calm yourself. Visualize yourself in that space, and it's really cool. When I do this in person with people, I notice right away their shoulders will go down. They become lighter. A lot of people smile. Try this when we're done in front of a mirror and you'll see. Because we're tricking our brains. Our brains don't know we're not on that beach in Tahiti. We're like smelling the salt water. We're hearing the waves. We're feeling the warmth of the sun on our bodies, right? It just helps us calm down. Our nervous systems calm down. And then we want to breathe, okay? If you do yoga, Pilates, however you learn to breathe, I'm good. The way I do it, right, is to smell the flower, deep breath in, blow out the candle, kind of a congruent breath out. So let's all try it. Smell the flower. Blow out the candle. Do that a few times, okay? If you do that a couple times during the day, you will have a better day. Your nervous system will calm down. You'll be able to use the smarter part of your brain more often. It's a really simple technique. It's so valuable. There's even so much more research that I could talk about with that, but just trust me, it's a beautiful thing to do. And then C I have is count. 1 to 30, somewhere in between 1 to 30. If you're highly triggered, 30. If you have to count higher than 30, and again, kind of slow pace, 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? If you have to count higher than 30, you're typically kind of too far gone, and what's going to happen next will not be pretty. So then you need to remove yourself from the situation if it's safe to do so. If it's not safe, you're cooking or something, then pretend that you are checked out and not listening, but don't interact if it's just going to make things worse, right? So step 2 is self-regulate. Visualize your calm space, breathe, a couple deep breaths, and count. This is classic behavior modification. We're giving ourselves space between stimulus and response, okay? Remember, we can't control others. I've tried, trust me, it doesn't work. But if I can model this regulation, I'll feel better. And then I model it for my child, who will then learn it from me. And then hopefully my child will model it for his or her peers, and then his or her partner someday, and then his or her children. And you get the picture. It's how we create change. And can you imagine, it's a simple process, a basic process, hard to do. But can you imagine what this world would look like if every single person, I get chills, stopped for 30 seconds, regulated, got calm, centered, and grounded before he or she said anything? It's mind-blowing. This would be a different world, okay? So real quick, before we go to step 3, I want to give you a tip. So establish a code word. This is a beautiful thing to do. I encourage it to most of the people who I meet with. Teach the code word to your children. Have the children, if they're old enough, come up with the code word. It needs to be a benign word. Blue, green bean, butterfly, okay? And what the code word means, it's a safety word. What it means is that I'm noticing that I'm getting dysregulated because I don't feel good. How, there's a magic word, how I'm being interacted with. And so I pay attention to my body. I'm empowered to try to advocate for myself, how I deserve to be treated, and I say butterfly. And I've already taught, we've had a family meeting, we go over this, and we teach people that when I say butterfly, you need to check yourself and check if you are interacting in a calm, kind, regulated way. And if you are, great. And then you would say, hey, I'm curious, what's getting triggered for you? Because I believe that I'm operating, I am interacting, that's what I was looking for, in a calm, kind way. Or they can notice that they're screaming and hopefully take it down. And if they don't after 10, 15 seconds, then the person who called butterfly has permission to disengage, okay? We need to come back and circle back and have some closure to what we were talking about, but only when we're dealing with regulated people. I don't want my children to learn in life that it's okay to interact with people who are acting crazy, okay, dysregulated, screaming, shaming, yelling at them. If they're on the playground and one of their peers throws sand at them or bullies them, what I want my child to feel empowered to do is to first notice their body that that doesn't feel good, and then feel that they deserve to be treated better. So they say stop, and they say to the person, I don't like how I'm being treated. And then if that person turns it around, well, great, they can stay on the playground. But if that person doesn't, they exit or find an adult or whatever they need to do. And they're not going to learn that unless they can first learn it in our family. So again, code word, establish it. Parents can use it with kids. If the child's screaming at parent, and you're going to very quickly learn what you'd say first. But establish a code word in your family. All right, let me go on. Okay, step number 3, right? So remember, step 1 was aware I'm triggered. Step 2 was to self-regulate, to calm ourselves down so we can interact with the smart part of our brain and respond, right? Step 3 is what we call flat affect, poker face, okay? Sometimes I am being reactive by screaming, lecturing, shaming. Sometimes I'm not saying a word, but I'm doing this. That is just as reinforcing to a child, okay? And remember, negative attention is just as good as getting your attention, and I'm sorry, let me slow myself down. Negative attention is better to your child than not getting your attention, okay? Again, hard to wrap our head around, but it's true. If you're on the phone and you scream at your child to stop, I've told you 15 times, stop bothering me on the phone. What are they going to do 12 seconds later? Bug you when you're on the phone again, because what did they get? The positive reinforcement, right? They got reinforced for what they were doing. Okay, so when you have a flat affect, you are not reinforcing the negative behavior, okay? Anything you want to see stick around, give it all you got. So this is the opposite of poker face. So if your child is sharing their toy, you look at your child and say, oh, that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing your toy. Thank you for putting your shoes where they belong. Oh, my heart is so happy that you cleared the table without me asking. Okay, so that's the opposite of poker face. So the takeaway, reinforce the behaviors you want to stay, give it all you got, give it zero energy for the behaviors you want to see go away. We could talk about positive reinforcement forever. Real quick, the more you can positively reinforce your child, the more they will continue those behaviors. Children just want our attention, they figure out how to do it. So positively reinforce your children, bare minimum 3 to 5 times a day, each parent. Okay, so let's keep going. So remember, number 1 is where I'm triggered. Step number 2 is we need to regulate, calm ourselves down, breathe, count, right? Go to our calm place. Step number 3 is the poker face. Step number 4 is connection, okay? There is a really cool Harvard study, you look it up, a longitudinal study over many years of what makes people happy, and they found out that it's connection, okay? So when we are in relationships, whether we're talking about our children, our marriage, whatever relationship it is at work, people want to feel seen and heard, because when we feel seen and heard, we feel like we matter, okay? That is what people typically want in a relationship, okay? So how do we connect? How do we show our kids they matter to us? Because we know that they do. So number 1, we want to listen. Many of us can give lots of examples of what it's like when we don't feel like we're listened to, right? Like you could be talking to a tree and that doesn't feel good. And now imagine that's your parent, right? You feel like you're talking to a tree. Turn your body to your child. If it's safe, get down on your child's level, look them in the eye. In your marriage, right? Open heart to open heart, eyes to eyes, so you can have emotional intimacy, okay? And then you want to validate. And I'm going to go through this quickly, but it's super important. One of the most important things I'm going to teach you tonight. Validation changes relationships because it communicates that you matter to me, okay? It communicates that I care so much about you, that how you feel, your truth, is valid. Anything other than that is judgment, okay? So how do we validate? You picture a pot on the stove. You take in from the other person what you see, touch, taste, hear, or smell. Your 5 senses is present data. It's right there. You take it in, you put it in your pot, you stir it, and you reflect it back. You give it back. It's reflective listening. I don't put any of my own ingredients in there, okay? Validation is hard for many people because they think it means they're agreeing, and they are not agreeing. Validation has nothing to do with agreeing or disagreeing. It's just holding space for somebody else's feelings, for somebody else's experience, right? Your son's anger that he has to turn off SpongeBob and watch TV is valid for him, okay? That he threw the remote across the room is not okay, and we'll deal with that in step 5. But first, the validation, right? Your 13-year-old whose boyfriend just broke up with her, she thinks it's the end of the world. We know it's not, thankfully, but to her, it is, right? In that moment, she's that hurt or sad, okay? So it sounds like this. I hear that you would rather watch TV than come into dinner. It's really hard to go up and take a bath when all you really want to do is play Legos. It sounds like you had a really rough day at school today, okay? Why do people get louder, repeat themselves, change their words when they don't feel heard, okay? So much stops when people feel heard. When our kids feel heard, they often don't even need to go to step 5. Why? Because the reason they threw that test rope was to get our attention. And when we listen to them and we validate and we connect, we lean in and we show them how much they matter to us, that feels really good, okay? So let's keep going. So validation is hard to do. You just have to practice, 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 practice. It's really hard to do because it's hard to watch our children suffer. It's hard to watch them feel sad or angry or hurt or scared. So it's with our best intention that we dismiss their feelings all day long. It comes from a good place. We don't like to see them upset. But what we're doing is dismissing their feelings. We're telling them how they should feel. We're not validating their truth, how they feel. Okay, a real quick example. Let's say that your son brings, he's coming towards you and he's sobbing and he's holding a fishbowl with a dead fish. Well, I'm highly triggered. I'm mad that that fish I bought 3 days ago died. I'm scared. How do I talk to my child about death? He's so young, right? I'm highly triggered. And if I don't use the steps that I've taught you and I just react and try to control, right? Because I want to make him stop crying because it's too uncomfortable for me, right? And I don't want him to feel pain. It comes from a good place. I would sound something like this. Johnny, you don't need to cry. Sorry, I forgot if I gave him a name. We'll call him Johnny. Johnny, you don't need to cry. It's just a fish. It's okay. But he probably cries harder now because he's like, can mom handle this? Is it okay to cry? Should I feel sad that my fish died, right? So he'll try again. He'll throw another rope at me and be like, Mom, you don't get it. Nemo was my best friend, and now I'm scared I won't have anyone to talk to after school. So I'm even more triggered, so I try to fix it, right, which is my reactivity. And I say, well, it's okay. I'll stop cooking dinner. We'll go buy you a new one. Now, again, pure of heart, I'm trying to make him happier. But now I've just modeled for him that I want him to numb himself and not sit in his pain, which is not something we want to do. Okay, so how would I handle this? So my child's coming towards me. Step number one is that I'm aware I'm triggered. My heart's beating fast. I'm sweating. I'm clenching my fist. Step number two, I need to regulate, right? So I need to calm myself down. I need to breathe. I need to count, right? I need to visualize my calm place, my happy place. Step number three is I need to get myself, right? So I look like I'm regulated, put on my poker face, and then I would turn my body towards him and get down on his level, look him in the eye with a gentleness and validate and say something like, Johnny, I see your tears. I hear how sad you are that your fish died. Okay, I didn't tell him it's good, bad, right, or wrong, how he should feel or anything. All I did was take in what he gave me, I stirred it and gave it back. Now he'll probably calm down because he feels heard and seen and he feels like he matters. And this is where he matters. This is where my tears start because this is so valuable. And then he'll feel safe with me to be that adult, to bring me his pain, which is what we want. And then he'll probably start talking to me and say, yeah, Mom, I'm super scared because I think I'm going to be lonely after school. And again, I validate and I say, wow, I hear that you're really, really nervous about being lonely, being scared, being by yourself after school. I hear you. And I have now just connected with him. I haven't said anything about whether this is right, wrong, or good or bad, or my experience or Great Aunt Sally's experience. I've just shown him I can be that guy, that adult that he can trust, that he can be vulnerable with, seen, heard. He can give me his heart. Okay, I know I make this sound easy because I've just been practicing forever. But once you practice, it's just a new language, practice, 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 practice. You will get better at it. Really quick, it looks like time that we have some time for this. Real quick, a marital example, okay? So I don't know, years ago, I was talking to my mom. I wanted to make spaghetti. My mom wanted to make lasagna for family dinner. I was mad. It was silly, but I was mad. I hung up, yelled my husband's name across the house. He's a good guy, doesn't like to see me upset. He did not use this process. He just reacted, right? Angry wife, calling his name. He was triggered. He's like, Nance, you're super upset. Just go pick up the phone and call your mom. You don't need to be mad. Just tell her what you want. Well, sorry, I can't see your faces, but I'm imagining you guys know that didn't work so well for me. Like, does he not think I can take care of this myself? Does he need to tell me what to do, right? His reactivity created the very outcome he was hoping to avoid. I was now mad at my mom, and I was mad at him. Instead, if he used the process and ended with the validation and just looked at me like, wow, Nance, you are so fired up. It sounds like, you know, that conversation with your mom really got to you. Unicorns, butterflies, perfect. Okay, let's keep going. So, quick connection tip, and then we'll get to step 5. Schedule one-on-one time with your children. I know I'm asking for the moon. Everything I'm talking about is front-loaded in effort, and I know that. But even if you do a little bit of it, right, you will see the payoff for a lifetime, and that is true. It's front-loaded with effort to parent this way, but the payoff is beautiful and it lasts, okay? Schedule one-on-one time. Each adult in the house should be doing this with your children. I'm going to ask for every day. I always ask for the moon. Okay, if you can just do it once a week this week, cool. Good place to start. 10 to 30 minutes, no cell phone, no sibling, no other parent, one-on-one, focus. It's telling our children, I just noticed my voice got louder because this is really important. It's really communicating to my child that life is so busy, but I want to show you how much you matter to me. And I'm going to make time to know you every day. And if we can, you get more bang for your buck if you can schedule it, because then it's something they can look forward to, right? Which is cool. If you can't, that's okay. Most importantly, please follow through. If you can't, something happens, the toilet leaks or whatever, you go to your child and you say, I am so sorry. Model for them what you want. I am so sorry. I can't spend my time with you. I'm really going to miss spending time with you today, but the toilet overflowed. Tomorrow, after dinner, you and I, front porch, so excited. And do an activity where you can engage. I know it's harder during COVID. If it's watching TV, it's watching TV. We typically try for it to be an activity, throwing the ball, baking cookies, building Legos, reading, something you can do. All right, I'm speeding up a little bit so we can save time for questions. Step 5 is structure, okay? I am just going to tell you up front, I'm doing you a disservice by giving you this information, okay? It's a lot, but I didn't want to leave it out. This is the stuff, the meat and potatoes, you can go look up, you can Google, you can call a school counselor, you can read a book, right? You can reach out for some more help from somebody. But step 5 is structure. So kids need structure to feel safe. Why in a classroom do 3-year-olds or 15-year-olds go nuts? Their ground is shaking, they're scared, and they do what we do, that reactivity. They react, throw ropes, to test the adult, the poor substitute teacher, to give them the structure they need. Can we chew gum? Is there going to be a pop quiz, right? Can I talk to my friends? And then when the adult gives them the structure, they calm down and they can focus more on being their best selves and learning instead of external and trying to get the system to calm down, okay? So we need structure in our family system, okay? We don't want the ground to shake. Every family set up house rules, Google how to do that. Most important thing, state your rules in terms of what you want, not what you don't want. If I say to you, don't think of the color blue, most of you are thinking of the color blue. But instead, if I say, please think of the color red, right? Instead of don't throw the ball in the house, because that's what they're hearing, instead say balls get thrown outside, okay? Every family needs a house set of rules. Typically when kids are little, focus is on safety. As kids get older, it's more on chores and drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff. But every family needs their manual. All right, clear expectations. We all the time set our kids up to fail. We set our partners up to fail by saying things like, hey, we're going to see grandma, be nice. What does that mean? Kid could think it means don't spit on grandma, when we know it means look grandma in the eye, look at her and say, hey, I love you, I've missed you, right? We're going to a store, behave. What does that mean? Hey, sweetie, we're going to the store. I need you to either choose to hold the cart or my hand. I need you to stay within eyesight, whatever that means to you, okay? I have a husband-wife example real quick. Let me throw it in because this pops up a lot in marriage and partnership, right? We set each other up to fail. We set ourselves up not to get our needs met simply by not being clear. Husband in my office years ago said, you know, my wife wanted me to show her I love her more, so I did. And I'm oversimplifying this. And I said, cool, tell me what you did. And I promised I was nicer than that. But he said, well, for a week, I brought her flowers, I put the kids to bed, and I forgot what the third thing was. Let's make it up. That I clean the kitchen every night. And at the end of the week, I looked at her and said, see, can you tell I love you more? And she's like, no. So he looked at me, he's like, see, she's never satisfied. So I looked at the wife and I said, let's make up a name, Julie. What data would you need to see coming in from your husband that you would label, he loves me more? She's like, oh, simple. Every day when we get home from work, he first comes to me, puts his arms around me, looks me in the eye and says something nice. And the guy was like, oh, because he thought he had just wasted all that time doing those things. She set herself up to not get her needs met, and she set him up to fail by not looking at him and saying, hey, sweetie, I know you love me. I just want to feel it more. It would really be cool if when we get home from work, you could look me in the eye, come to me and put your arms around me and say something nice. Okay? She's giving herself her best shot at getting what she needs. She's being clear, giving him his best shot to be like, hey, that's all my wife needs. Cool, no sweat off my back. I can choose to do it or not. And if not, well, then they've got other issues to deal with. But that's how it works. Okay, so ignore the small stuff, okay? I am jumping ahead. Sorry. Let me go to my slide. big picture, we need a house set of rules. We need a morning routine, an afternoon, evening routine, homework routine, and a bedtime routine from day one. Not quite day one, but after a couple months, we need routines, okay? And again, these are the things you can Google. Responsibilities. Kids need chores. It's really good for how they feel about themselves to have chores and to show them that you have trust in them, that they can accomplish something, and then they do it and they feel really good. So look up age and developmentally appropriate responsibilities for your child online. Okay, so that's the big picture. That's how we create some structure, big picture in our family. The more structure we have in our family, just think of that classroom, the less we need to go to the in the moment stuff. Why? Because kids throw the test ropes again when they're scared when ground is shaking. But the more we can get our family system, the ground to stop shaking, the less they need to actually act out. So in the moment, we can ignore behaviors, and those very simply are the ones that are annoying. We don't want to ignore behaviors for someone who's going to get hurt or something's going to get broken. But look up online the behaviors that are better, like whiny, how to ignore that. We want to give choices, and again, we could spend years talking about this, but for the most part, use the words when then, when your room's clean, then you may have your computer time. When your coat is on, then you may go outside and ride your bike. It's a great simple way to give choices. The more choices, the more empowered we can make our kids. When they really do have a choice, the more likely they are to acquiesce when they don't have a choice. Okay, it needs to be a balance of giving them choice and then of us being the parent, and it's our box. Okay, little kids, would you like to hop like a bunny or pretend you're a train getting in the car? Okay, big kids, the box is we're going to see grandma tonight. Within the box, choice. Would you like to go before you do your homework or after, or before dinner or after? Okay, consequences. All right, we want to let the consequences do the screaming and not us. It's a bedrock truth in life that every choice you make, no matter who you are, how much money you have, what ethnicity you are, every choice we make has consequences. There's lots of types of consequences we're not going to get into, but we need to teach our children that choices have consequences while they're in our home. That's our responsibility to them. There's that word again, 2 words, sorry. So when they leave our home, they don't suffer greater consequences or more consequences, as the research shows, as they leave our home. Sorry, I'm probably going too fast, but I want to get time for questions. So when your 8-year-old leaves his homework on the table, he gets a 0 or whatever the consequence is. You do not bring it to him at school. I allowed my children every semester, because they weren't perfect, to have 1 pass. That when if I could, if I wasn't with a client and I could bring them their homework, I would. 1 pass, okay? When your 4-year-old won't stay in his bed, he gets his teddy bear or his lovey taken away until he chooses to get back in bed, and then you give it back to him, okay? So we need to follow through with what we say, right? What the consequences will be. And again, they need to be age and developmentally appropriate. They need to matter. If I speed and get a $10 ticket, will be very different than if I speed and I get a $150 ticket. Okay, we need to figure out what matters to our children and build some consequences around there. And again, these are the things that you can look up. We could spend 12 years talking about this. Okay, remember, empty threats are broken promises. When we don't follow through with something, we are breaking trust. And if you remember back to one of my first 2 slides, we need to be that adult to guide our children through something, okay? We are gonna screw up, myself included, more than I like to admit. When we screw up, model for your child that they're gonna screw up too, and that's okay, right? They're good enough when they screw up, right? And this is what you want them to do. Have them be aware of it, have them own it, and try to make amends. Hey, sweetie, I told you that if you didn't turn the TV off, you're never watching TV again. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I was just really upset. What I meant was that next time you choose not to turn the TV off the first time I ask you, you are choosing to lose your screen privileges for 24 hours, okay? What we say, we have to be able to follow through with. If we can't, the minute you're aware of it, own it and apologize, make amends, because that's what we want our kids to do with us or anyone else when they screw up. You wouldn't like tell your kid, hey, we're going to Disney World, we're so excited. And the next day say, I'm just kidding. We just wouldn't do that. But that's what we do when we say things that we don't follow through with, okay? If kids can't trust us, then they're not going to trust those other authority figures in their life, because we are their first authority figure. All right, I make this look like a piece of cake. I know that, because I live, eat, and breathe this 24/7 for the last 20 years, okay? Probably longer. Creating change, doing all this is hard. It's a brand new language. It's going to take time. If you spend 3 months doing step 1, I will be thrilled. Why? because you have gotten to know step one. You're showing yourself you want to change. You're modeling for your child that we can always grow, that they're worth, they deserve us to become better parents, better people. And then they're going to learn, hey, I want to become better at something. What do I do? Oh, I put effort in, right? We always want to praise effort. So we got to model it. So, and then you take the next 3 months to do steps 2, and you take a year to do all 5 steps. That's cool, because then you have a lifetime to use this. Okay. So small steps, grace for ourselves. Know that this is going to be harder for some of us than others, depending on what we bring with us from history. Some of us are going to need some help, professional help from what's in our history. Some of us are going to need read books, talk with our friends, right? Learn how to meditate, exercise, learn how to regulate, all the things we talk about, okay? I'm almost done. There's one thing I forgot to throw in. It is out of sequence, and I apologize. Should have been in the first part, but it's so important. I'm going to take a minute. When our children are defiant, right? A lot of times they're scared. But remember that when a child or an adult is defiant, it's typically because there's an unmet need underneath that behavior. Whether they don't feel respected, they don't feel heard, they're tired, they're sad, okay? So if you don't think you can do it, right? Well, sorry, one more slide real quick. A lot of us showed up as the Green Witch. I always forget her name. What I taught is, I forgot her name, Glinda, I think. Yeah. So know that at first your children are not going to like Glinda because they're used to the Green Witch, right? And remember, if you've been doing parenting this way for 5 years, 5 years of patterns that become familiar, and familiarity breeds comfort. Not saying it feels good, but that's what they know. And so they're gonna be like, who's this person who's showing up? I think I can get her to scream. I'm just gonna scream louder, hit my brother harder, to suck us back in to interacting in the way they know. And that's where this gets even harder, because we have to continue on the course and be that self-regulated adult who they need to guide them, okay? Eventually, some kids it happens pretty quickly. Some are more tenacious and it takes longer, but at some point they'll realize that we are showing up as a healthier, kinder parent, and that will feel really good to us and to them. All right, last slide. If we don't think we can do it, we need to think of Rosa Parks, right? It all begins with this one sentence. I don't know what anyone else is going to do, but this is what I'm going to do, okay? The only way to change a pattern is to focus on our part of the pattern and learn to remove our hand from the handshake, and then pattern changes. She was one woman. This answers the question that you asked, the reader asked earlier, Stephanie. One woman doing something different. She knew as long as she waited for anybody else to change, she was in a helpless position. But if she herself calmly did something different, she could change the world. And thank goodness that she did. I am done. Thank you, everybody. Do we have time for any questions?
Yes, I think we do. The cool thing about being online is, you know, if people have to sign off, they can, and we love you. And they can circle back. But we have one that's come in that said, what are your tips for a child that has ADHD/ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder? Behavior is a challenge more so than my other children. So, you know, maybe has other kids who aren't struggling with this. And so any tips on that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm trying to simplify my answer here. I could talk for about 20 minutes, but basically everything I taught tonight is still what we need to do, because there are more specific things that we can do with kids who bring other issues to the moment, right? And they're doing their best and they bring some other issues with them. It's how they were wired. And that's where I would encourage them. There are a ton of great podcasts, resources out there to help them learn some of these other tools to use with kids who bring some other difference to the moment. And we still need to show up as that calm, kind, connected parent, self-regulated, because none of those other tools will work for anything that a child brings, or an adult for that matter, if we're not first that calm, centered, regulated person. So I hope that answers the question enough in the time that we have. So.
No, I think that's great. I think the hardest, I've heard this presentation twice, and I think the regulating yourself, for me, I think I'm sort of aware of triggers. I feel like I've sort of a little bit on that path, but the regulation part, especially in parent in parenting. And obviously, you know, I have a child with special needs who's nonverbal, so we have a lot of extra issues, but my triggers sometimes are just like their hair triggers, you know, it feels like dynamite. And that, you know, that trying, to your point, to stop, you know, between that feeling and the reaction, it almost feels impossible because it feels, you know, almost like it's right there. But the way that sometimes I can help myself is by patterns, by being able to spot it and say, oh, this thing is happening again. And it often happens in this order. But I know that other parents certainly struggle with that. And if you guys have questions, you know, feel free to put them in the chat box. But I don't know if you have tips for that. It feels almost impossible to get in between those two things, you know?
Well, yeah, and so that's why we have those kind of three, how to self-regulate right in the moment. To me, those are real simple, and simple doesn't mean easy to do, but really basic, that's a better word, to understand that we need to count and we need to breathe, because that will calm our nervous system down. Because what you're talking about, Stephanie, is right. Our brains are wired to be like, oh, tiger, do something about the tiger, right? I don't want to stop and think, oh, it's a pretty tiger. Should I talk to the tiger, right? Because then we'd be eaten, right? So it's hard. We're working against our wiring here. But so in the moment, when we can come up with those things that help us regulate, and then bigger picture, the more we can meditate, right? And exercise and do the things that feed our soul, the more that we can help ourselves in those moments when it is more challenging to be that connected person to myself. Because it's kind of that floaty feeling, you know, like we can be calm. So when we say calm, it's kind of tricky. It's more of that connected to myself space that we want to get into. And so the more I can connect to myself through meditation and mindfulness and all of that, right, the more I can then ground myself and be that external regulator for my child, for others.
That's great. And then another question about, I know you talked about positive reinforcement with kids, but what about in marriage from a standpoint? I mean, I know we're supposed to be, I've heard this thing, like, I don't know, like if you have every time you have an argument, you're supposed to have sex twice or something, like these weird kind of like weird rules, you know? And I mean, I'm sure that there's not a specific rule, but sort of the idea of like how to keep things positive and not in these toxic cycles. I mean, that maybe not is a bad, I mean, it's probably a good idea, I would assume, but
well,
it's a little hard to achieve.
I'm going to leave that for another webinar, if that's okay. With awareness, I'm going to deflect away from that and kind of give my spin on it, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, you know, people do different things, and whatever works is all good. But the important thing is to be able to communicate with our partners what we need, because many of us, where we kind of fall short, and fall short doesn't mean shame, so we weren't taught how to do this, right? Many of us will say how we feel. I'm mad, right? You yelled at me, right? Which is important to share that we don't like that. But then we stop and we don't follow it up with a need or want for next time. And that's where I often see couples get stuck. And so I would, you know, in any type of dynamic, right? Sit down in a quiet moment, not when the kids are underfoot, you know, have a date night, or now you can't go out, you know, when your kids are sleeping, throw a picnic blanket on the carpet, right? And have a cool dinner and talk about kind of some patterns that you notice in your marriage where you get stuck. Talk about kind of what the feeling is for each of you. Validate that in the other, which again, doesn't mean you're agreeing or disagreeing. You're just showing your partner how much they matter to you, which is really the key. And then be open to hearing what they need from you. And then you can decide whether you're willing to do that or not. But my job in this world is to become aware of how I feel, ask for what I need or want. And then it's up to others whether they do it. I have no control over that. But is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like sometimes we know these things, we just need to be reminded, you know, we need to be told and kind of brought back to center. So do you want to tell them a little bit more about Be the Adult before we sign off, just so that they can hear about your nonprofit? Because I think it's so cool and it's so important. And sometimes people don't catch us in the beginning. And I know you talked about it a little bit. And also your podcast. Tell us about that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's my baby. I'm so excited. So we're a nonprofit, and we wrote this book, 15 Things All Children Need to Thrive, and you can get a free copy on our website. We're in our second printing. We haven't gotten them yet. But we started a podcast in November. We're in season 2, and we've had some guests this season, which is different. So we're excited about that. And Stephanie, if I give it away, you're coming on our podcast, which I'm excited about, which I appreciate. But please listen to us. We're on Apple and Spotify, and sign up for our newsletter and like us on Facebook. And please know right now it's Be the Adult for Your Child, because I believe everything starts in the home, right? This is where we need to create the change and the feeling good enough and all of that. And then at some point we hope to do Be the Adult for Your partner, Be the Adult for your country, because really we believe these skills can apply in so many areas. So let us know how we can help you. You can email me at nancy@betheadult.org if you want a book or have some more questions. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. I wish we were here in person because we could all clap and say how awesome it was. And this is such great information. I actually was thinking as we were going through this, I was like, I need to teach my real estate agents this, because in high stakes negotiations, this is often what as you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're having to calm yourself down and do all of this. So it's such a great practice across all kinds of places in our lives. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've recorded this, so if you missed a part of it, you'll be able to go back and hear the beginning. And Nancy, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. You're the best.
Oh, thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for coming. And please pat yourself on the back for listening. And your children, thank you. And so do I.
Absolutely. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye.